So that should be coming through to you guys now. Let me know if there are any issues with that. So first things first, you should be landing in Miro, as you can see. In terms of agenda, we're just going to cover a few things. The why of why do engaging retros? Why include a little bit of creativity in your retrospectives? I'm going to find out a little bit more about you and your experience of retrospectives. We're then going to choose a theme, and together, as part of this workshop, we're going to create a new retro that will be one that we can share as a community. And then I always try and leave any sessions I facilitate with actionable takeaways. So things that you guys can try, experiments that you can use in your working lives outside of this. Is everyone seeing Miro okay within Meat Butter? Someone can give me a nod or a message in chat. That'd be pretty. Thanks, Mark. I can see a thumbs up. So, where we should be, I'm going to bring everyone to me, is why make creative retros? So, it's very, very simple. Why do creative retros? Well, to keep things fresh. I'm certain if you, like me, have been involved in retrospectives, they can become a little bit stale. They can become this, what did we do last time? What are we going to do next time? And it can become very, very repetitive. And the consequence of that repetition is people can disengage. They may be less likely to share things. And also there may be less likely for things to come up because they've talked about it before and therefore they don't want to bring it up again. Another great reason I find is to celebrate microcultures. Each team has its own microculture. There could be a team full of avid video gamers. There could be a team full of people that love music. There could be a team that really love the same TV show. And each team has its own identity, and we should be celebrating that. So we should work with them to celebrate that rather than trying to standardize and do the same styles over and over. I find via doing these creative retros, you do get that increased engagement. People connect to the content. And I'll tell you a story. Recently, not too long ago, I created a Queen retrospective with all songs from the rock band Queen. And someone came to me and said, hey, we used your Queen retrospective, and this program manager, this hard-faced program manager who never cracked a smile, he loved it, and he confessed that he loved Queen, and that resulted in him smiling and engaging with the team for one of the first times. And now something as simple as doing a bit of a creative retrospective can result in a story like that. For me, it's an instant win. It's also great to provoke different thinking. And again, I'll give you an example here. The simple act of changing the language of a question from, what did we do last time or what didn't go well to something a bit more different, something more abstract, can result in more things coming up. And that applies to any question you ask. If you go to a daily stand-up and you ask everyone, what impediments or blockers do you have? A lot of the time they'll say, well, I haven't got any blockers. But then if you ask them the question, you tweak it slightly, say, what challenges are you facing? That changes it from something that's stopping them making progress, but actually something that they might need a little bit of support or help with. And that slight language change can result in more engagement, more response. And the same applies to retrospectives. It doesn't have to be what didn't go well. You can ask it in a very different way. I created today a Ghost of Christmas Futurespective themed on Charles Dickens' story, The Christmas Carol. And the question that came up that was similar to that was, what are the ghosts of our iterations past? So what's haunted us in the past? And something like that, rather than it being what didn't go well, makes it a little bit more abstract, makes it a bit more fun, and you might find that people will come up with different things as a result. And lastly, why do creative retros? Because I firmly believe work can be fun if you allow it. If you had a bit of creativity, if you make a little bit of effort, it can be fun. So here's where I want you guys to engage. Before we start and create this retro ourselves, you shall see on your screen here 3 questions and lots of white post-it notes. I'd love to hear from you guys what your favorite retrospective theme is. If anyone hasn't used Miro before, you should just be able to double-click any of those post-it notes and then you can type. Do make sure on the left-hand side of your screen there's a little blue select icon. Select it, or you can press V on your keyboard. That would achieve the same outcome. But I'd love to hear what your favorite retrospective theme is. Superheroes, good one. I did an Avengers Infinity War themed one recently, which is quite cool. Lego, I don't think I've seen that one. 4Ls, a bit of a classic. One's related to films. Movie critic, Fast and Furious. Ones that linked to times of year. So, yeah, seasonal ones. Easter, Christmas, Halloween, all sorts. Make them topical. Two truths and a lie. Like it. Sing your sprint. I'd love to hear about that one. Someone should tell me. Do you actually sing during that retrospective, or is it creating a song about the retrospective? I'm interested. I'm intrigued. A lean coffee retro. Okay, so we got lots of different retro themes coming through here. Now, not necessarily rated retrospective this time, but I'd like you guys to tell me what interesting team names perhaps you've had. So there's lots of I've personally worked with, again, Marvel themed ones, Game of Thrones themed ones. I'm just intrigued to see how else people have used team names. I realised I've not changed the third question there, so we're only going to have two questions there. Disney characters. Don't think I've done any Disney themed retros yet. Knickerbockers. My teams are boring. We use actual team names. I'm sorry to hear that. All right, so what we just highlighted there is there's lots of team names. And the reason I brought this up is because you have a team name, you've already got a team that's open to the idea of the abstract, something different. So why not work with that and take it further and say, right, we've got a team name that's Marvel. Let's use a Marvel retrospective. Let's go even further. Let's create some language around our team, and we'll come on to a little bit more about that later. Okay. So what I'd like us to do now, and this is a blank canvas, is essentially choose your theme. What we're going to do is I'd like you guys to, via post-it notes, or however you like, actually, it doesn't have to be post-it notes. You could copy and paste an image from Google. You could type in text. You could type it in the chat. I'd like to hear some ideas as to what retro theme we could create together as a group today. And we're going to put some ideas down, then we're going to vote on it. And the one that gets the most votes is the one we're going to create together as a group. So chuck some post-it notes down. You can use the people are starting to do it now. In fact, I'll copy and paste you some post-it notes in as well. There you go, some post-it notes appearing on the screen. The Office. The Grinch. I've already done a Grinch one, by the way, but we can certainly create another. Marvel. Treasure Island or Treasure Hunt. That would be cool. Corona. Yeah, I was thinking of doing a pandemic-themed one. Jamie, your colleague is welcome to join. If she has the link, she can join. There's no blocker on doing so. More than welcome.
Great, thanks.
The future. So we're talking about future perspective. The Brady Bunch. I'm an English person, and although I know of the Brady Bunch, I wouldn't honestly be able to tell you how to do that. I don't know enough about them. I'm sure you guys can help though. Scooby Doo, Spaceballs. I think that's a movie, isn't it? Pac-Man, classic video games. All right. What I'd like us to do now is vote, and I'm going to set a vote option that will appear on your screen. So we'll have just a minute to do a vote, and you'll have 2 votes each to vote on any of those sticky notes that is on this screen now. So it should appear to you in just a moment. Okay. Vote away. Choose the retro that you'd most love to create as a group. Space Jam. Last 20 seconds to get your votes in. All right, time's up. So we should be seeing the results appearing in a moment. Yeah, just processing. Okay, so the most voted one is Fairytales with 5 votes, followed by Corona with 4 votes, and Treasure Hunt with 4 votes, and Classic Computer Games. So Fairytales edges it. We're going to go with the majority. So I'm going to bring everyone to a fresh template. Let's create our retro. Can everyone see where I am? We're on the Let's Create a Retro board. So you'll see on the right-hand side here, I've said this template was created with at love by the virtual Agile community. That's you guys. We are going to create this retro together. Now, when I'm creating a retro, I'm always thinking of trying to ask anything between 3 and 6 questions. I always try and challenge. Oh, I've just moved something around there. Hold on. I think I may have left a few things unlocked. So let me sort that because we only need to change the text. Don't want some of these things moving by mistake. Okay. So in this part of the session, I'd like you guys to speak out loud. You don't have to be silent. You can type in the chat. You can use the post-it notes within the board. What we need to do is try and come up with 3 to 5 questions relating to fairy tales to make this retro happen. So one thing I often do as well, and we're not going to do this today, but just to take it one step further, I often try and create an icebreaker relating to the theme. So when I did the Harry Potter retrospective not too long ago, I created a situation where there was a Harry Potter quiz, like a sorting hat style thing, and people could choose their own little icons and drag them to answer the questions, and it basically created like a sorting hat situation. Now, that's obviously a little icebreaker energizer. We're not going to do that today, but what we are going to do is focus on trying to make an immersive retro experience using fairy tales. So I guess things that come to my mind right now around how to do a fairy tale retrospective, I'd be thinking of the film titles, maybe some of the classic characters. You know, you've got Prince Charming and things like that. You've always got some sort of evil villain. So what's the evil villain of our iteration, or what's preventing us from progressing? This is where I want you guys to start thinking of ideas, what we could do for questions. And there's always some themes around the questions. So I'm always trying to ask something that might help improve trust with the team, something that we can celebrate success of the team. Obviously, there's always the kind of what went wrong or what went really well and those sorts of things as well. And you can think of abstract ways or metaphorical ways to do that. But has anyone got any ideas, first of all, as to how we could turn some of these questions into fairy tales?
The Princess and the Pea, possibly.
Okay, so we're kind of talking about morals from fairy tales? Or are we talking about just doing one around the whole of that film?
I'm not even sure, to be honest. My thought in my brain was the princess are looking for the pea within some issues. I don't know.
Okay. All right, so we've got something around the Princess and the Pea. Has anyone got any other films that they want to chuck forward, or ideas around fairy tales?
I'm thinking about Poisonous Apple.
Poisonous Apple. Okay, so we've got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yep, and how potential banana skin or something, some sort of, I don't know, challenge that could have really derailed the sprint.
Yeah. Okay. I've written down Princess and the Pea as well. It's like what's hidden or what's getting our way, and then we've got
Skyfall.
How about Rapunzel?
Okay. What about Rapunzel?
The road to
Yeah.
a solution.
All right.
The Rapunzel when she sticks her hair out. The road to a solution. I don't know because he
Okay.
climbed up.
Rapunzel.
Or-
what's
or the road-
our golden
the
hair?
road-
What's our hair we can climb?
The road to escape or a solution or saved by another kind of thing.
Okay.
Progress.
What about like a happily ever after? So the things that were completed and went well.
So we've somehow these have unlocked again. What's happened there? I'm not sure how that happened. Hold on.
How about something like the golden goose? What was our aim and did we achieve it?
Right. Okay.
How about the three little pigs and the three houses?
Yeah. So how can we turn that into a question?
You
What
could
were they houses
say
in straw that fell over, flew away?
or you could say what things in our last sprint were like the house of sticks, like
Okay. Yeah.
one breath and it doesn't, and what things on the opposite, and what things were represented the house, the brick house.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. So we've got good. I think that one's forming very nicely.
There is actually a Three Little Pigs retro out there already.
Is there?
Yeah,
So that probably.
it's literally based on the three houses. So what's holding us up, as in what's really strong and what we've done. That's the brick house. The house of straw is what what can easily be collapsed and what should we do better, and then obviously the one in the middle.
Okay. So we've got what's our happily ever after. We've got something around Three Little Pigs, but there is another retro that covers that. But that doesn't mean we can't include a question relating to that here. We've got the Princess and the Pea. I think we should flesh out a bit more. So that the Princess and the Pea, the moral of that story is someone being able to feel something beneath many, many layers, and that was proving she was a princess, right? How can we turn that into a retrospective question for a team? Obviously, we've got a what's our happily ever after, so that could be something along the lines of what does our vision for a great next iteration look like?
So you could say what didn't feel right this sprint, what felt uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So what felt uncomfortable? I guess that doesn't necessarily depend on blockers or anything like that, but just what do we feel uncomfortable with in the last iteration, and that could lend to anything to do with the kind of communication and teamwork as well as what on our way. So does the poisonous apple represent risks? Do we think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going to harm us? What will get in the way of our success? Rapunzel. What hair can we climb? Sounds odd, but it's obviously off the story. What's our pathway to progress? Do we have any other fairy tales that we can leverage here?
If that one feels odd, you got Jack and the Beanstalk, so you're climbing up the beanstalk.
Okay. Any questions that can come out of Jack and the Beanstalk? What's the giant we need to conquer?
Not to get a sidetrack, Chris, but what about? I was just thinking about. I had to look up. What about the Three Little Bears? Because they had the different.
Yeah. So what's that? It's porridge, isn't it? What feels just right in the beds?
Yeah.
the Goldilocks zone, isn't it, for our Goldilocks zone?
Someone's also put Chicken Little in the chat.
Okay, yeah, Chicken Little. What can someone remind me? What's the fable, or what's the moral learning from Chicken Little?
Someone's put the sky's falling down. Yeah.
Okay.
Someone else has got Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. So what are we guilty about?
In terms of Jack and the Beanstalk, so you've got pressure from Jack's mom, and you've got pressure from the giant, and then just challenging, well, Jack to think on his feet, go ahead and do what he wants to do, in spite of the pressure from these two obvious sources.
Sure. So I'm just going to, I've seen there's a few things that have come up in the chat. Someone's saying, are we not assuming that remote team workers from different parts of the world are familiar with the fairy tales in question? I guess the answer is no, we can't assume they are, but this is an opportunity to share that with them and contextualize it as well. So we can obviously, as we're doing this retro, we can introduce them to that fairy tale and the concept of it. Again, I encourage you doing that. It's the same when I've created a Diwali themed retrospective, for example. There are a lot of people from the Western culture who don't understand Diwali, and for me, it's a great opportunity to share in the Indian culture and learn a little bit more about Diwali. As much as it could be that someone doesn't understand these fairy tales, they could learn a little bit about that as well. And again, I guess the other point to emphasize is that these retro formats are not one size fits all, right? You should try and tailor the format you use to the team you have. You may have a team that's primarily from one culture, you may have a team that's primarily from another. You may have the opportunity to share both and allow different team members to choose a format each time so that everyone gets a turn and that sort of thing. There's lots you can do there to be inclusive. All right, so we've got one to do with Snow White. We've got one to do with Rapunzel. We've got Three Little Pigs. We've got Round Jack and the Beanstalk, Alibaba. Let's try and formulate these into 6 we're going to choose. The ones that I think are the most ready at the moment is probably the Poisonous Apple. This represents, I guess, our risks, what's going to get in the way. We've got a clear one around Happily Ever After. Most fairy tales have a Happily Ever After, so I think that's quite good there. We've got Rapunzel. Yeah, we've got a pathway to progress. The hair, what represents the hair we can climb. And we should try and formulate those other 3 as well. So we've got I quite like the Princess and the Pea one in that it does ask a question that we probably wouldn't typically ask in a retrospective about what was uncomfortable for us. And I think that doesn't have to focus on what made things difficult, but could equally be about how we worked as a team. So I'm quite a fan of that one. I'm not sure what you guys think. Right, let's try and finalize a couple more then. So I think where we've got a Three Little Pigs one, or there's already a Three Little Pigs retro, I'm inclined to move that one out and bring in one about the Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. How do we feel about that? You guys still hear me?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So how can we turn that into a question? We've kind of got the idea of Goldilocks is what was bad, what was good, and what was just right. So what's our Goldilocks zone? How can we turn that into a question for a retro? Anyone got any ideas? Feel free to type them in the chat or just type them on the Mario board if you wish. I'm really warm with my hat on. I'll take it off for a minute.
What slowed us down?
So how does slowing us down relate to the 3 Bears story?
You can relate to either the hot or the cold. So the cold could maybe be slowing down, and the hot could be what
What about stuff we tried that didn't work?
Okay. So maybe what did we try to work, or what's do hot and cold? How about that? There's 3 different ways of asking that. So what's our Goldilocks zone? What was just right? Maybe we could, I think, what was just right, and then what blew hot and cold? That probably relates most to the 3 bears. Okay. What felt off this account? So what felt uncomfortable in the last iteration? What to make things more comfy? All right, so we've got a happy about this giant, the giant one, Jack and the Giant, Jack and the Beanstalk. So the giant that we need to conquer represents, I guess, maybe a big story we need to take out, or something we need to focus on. What magic bean can we use to remedy our next sprint? All right, someone's added that. Cool.
Chris, what about do we have any sleeping giants?
Okay.
That's kind of like the first one that you put.
And what do you mean by sleeping giants there?
Thinking about unknown things that could potentially blow up that we might minimize.
Yeah, like things that could slow you down that you're not thinking of.
Okay. So I think by the looks of it, we now have 6 questions, all fairy tale related, and we just need to add some nice imagery. So I always try and add some sort of image relating to each of the questions I'm asking. Oh, I did not want to do that. Somehow that thing got grouped in. There we go. So I always try and add some sort of image relating to that. So what I do is I go to Google, I then search for something, and I look for a transparent version, and I just bring it onto the board. And it's just about adding a bit of visual to make it a bit more immersive. So I'm going to invite you guys to do exactly that. I'll just move that. I thought I'd locked that. Hang on. There we go. Lock. So I'm going to invite you guys to do exactly that. Go on Google and try and find some images relating to Snow White, Rapunzel, Princess and the Pea, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, Happily Ever After. I'm imagining some sort of Disney castle made from Disney, and Jack and the Beanstalk. So maybe if you guys could help me pull some images from that, and then I think we're pretty much done with our retro. Just adding a bit of color now. All right, we got the Prince and the Pea. We've got a nice beanstalk there. We've got Rapunzel with her hair. Okay. Starting to look good. Feel free to add any some of the things, just some other additions or visual imagery relating to fairy tales if you like as well. And they lived happily ever after, exactly just like that. Nice little garnish. Cool. So that was a very, that took maybe 15, 20 minutes together to create a different retrospective, one that's never been done before, to my understanding. And it's as simple as that. It doesn't really take much effort. I find when I've got a template like this, I can turn a brand new idea that I've thought of, and I've got a huge backlog of ones that I've got to create. I can turn that into a new retrospective within 20 minutes. And that's really all it takes. Once you've got a bit of a formula for it, or a number of ideas you can go with, it doesn't take a lot of effort. And I think a little bit of creativity goes a long way to the work with your teams. So I'm just going to move us on now to actionable takeaways, some things that I'd love you guys to think about outside of this workshop. And again, I'm just going to bring everyone to me once more. So you'll notice my retros are always around about 45 minutes to an hour in duration. The reason for that is I'm a big fan of a little less conversation, a little more action to share the immortal words of Elvis. Shortening the retro, I find, helps keep people engaged. And it's not that I don't value the time spent conversing about things, but I would almost rather have shorter retro sessions and pull them together, a couple of actions out. And I always try and encourage the team to come out with anything between 3 and 5 experiments or actions they can try in the next iteration, because realistically you can't focus on everything. For me, shortening the retros helps keep things engaged. Allowing the team to select the next format. So again, something I've been guilty of the past, and something I've observed other Scrum Masters doing or other Agile coaches doing, is choosing the retrospective on behalf of people and just bringing there and forcing people to use it. Whereas by empowering people to choose the retrospective, they buy into it a bit more. Create retros with your team. Do exactly what we've just done together. Why not? If you've got a team that's called that's Marvel themed or Game of Thrones themed, why not just sit down together and create one? It could be a fun Friday afternoon team bonding exercise. And again, they'll feel more accountable for it, and they'll own up to it, and they'll engage with it as a result, because it's something of their creation, not something you're pushing upon them. Now, extend engagement beyond the retros. So I've put here, create your own team language, and it's quite simple to do. It doesn't have to be just retros. So let's say the example here is I've got an image of Hulk and I've got an image of Ant-Man, obviously a tiny little Ant-Man from the Marvel universe. The reason for that is you could quite comfortably and quite easily, with your team that have Marvel team names, when it comes to them estimating user stories, why not encourage them to think of their estimates in terms of Marvel characters as well? So you could say, for example, a 1 point story, well, that's an Ant-Man, it's tiny, whereas something that's quite large, that's a Hulk, right? So you can create your own team language that you guys buy into, and that's part of your team microculture as well. And again, it's gamifying, it's making things a bit more fun, it's extending more than just giving them an interesting team name. A lot of teams have logos and things as well. There's all sorts you can do there to create that. And then lastly, as I said, a little creativity goes a long way. Honestly, what do you have to lose by trying a new retro format? If you've got a team that you've worked with for some time, or even if you're brand new to a team, more often than not, I have found that people are open to the idea of trying something new, especially if you go in with the expectation that they might be able to choose the next retrospective format, or you're open to trying a different one next time. So a little creativity, a little bit of investment before a meeting goes a long way to getting engagement. And I certainly don't want to wake up doing the same retrospectives every time. And as soon as you see or observe that disengagement, less people going on camera, less people come out with ideas at retrospectives, less people speaking at retrospectives, probably a sign that you might need to try something different. So I do very much encourage a little bit of creativity. It does help in a huge way, I find. So we've actually finished a little bit early. As I said, I was never intending for this to be just me to lecture you guys. I wanted it to be an engaging session that we work with together. So all I would ask is I'm going to bring you to the final section here, was how could this workshop have been more useful to you? Sort of feedback. What did you like or dislike? And if you had one wish about this workshop, what would it be? As a side note, while you guys are sharing your thoughts there, any of the retro templates that I create, they're always freely accessible. This one I will share with everyone as well, so everyone can use this. This is our retrospective. It's not anything that's personally mine. It's not. There's no IP behind it. I create these things, and they're very community driven. So any retro templates that I create are freely accessible, and they can be in Miro or they can be Mural otherwise. And for those that are saying they'd like to discuss teams that don't like having fun, because we've got this time slot, I'm more than happy to stick around and we can talk through ideas. If anyone wants to stay around and talk through things, happy to do so. Do it in lean coffee style. If there's some retrospective themed problems people want to discuss, I'm happy to stick around and talk. So I can see some feedback from someone saying meat butter was better, but still a bit laggy. Again, it's something I'm experimenting with using meat butter. Unfortunately, I don't have the money to pay for a large Zoom conference session, and a lot of these sessions I'm doing on a free basis. So at the moment, we're just using meat butter. I'm glad people enjoyed collaborating as part of this. That's the idea.
So, Chris, one question I had.
Sure.
When you do these retros, is it kind of a free for all, or do you let them choose to answer which questions they want, or do you just put, like, how do you facilitate these?
Good question. So what I tend to do is I'm a big fan of the kind of diverge, converge concept. So when I'm doing retrospective, and I guess the other answer is tailor this to your team. You may find that you have a team that are great at talking and they prefer to just discuss things. You may find that you've got a mixture, and you may find that there might be dominant voices that take over others. I always therefore encourage introducing the first question, introducing the idea, making sure the context is understood, and then giving some silent time for people to add their thoughts onto post-it notes, and then converging afterwards and discussing and trying to pull actions out of them. So if we were to
do you do one question at a time, or
Yes.
do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we were to go back to the creative or the board we've created today, I would begin with the poisonous apple, and I'd say, hey guys, right, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In this film or in this fairy tale, someone is faced with an evil queen who's trying to harm her. She does so with a poisonous apple, if you've seen the film. And in this story or in this question, we're trying to contextualize what's going to harm us in future iterations, what's going to get in the way of our success. I would introduce that. There might be a little bit of discussion around that film as well, because I want to allow time for personal engagement. But then I'll set a timer using Miro and allow people that silent reflection where they put things on their post-it notes. And then afterwards, once that timer's up, we would then discuss some of those things. And some of the questions I often ask is, did anything surprise anyone there? Because some of these things often go unspoken. So did anything surprise anyone there? And I'm always trying to obviously focus on pulling out some actions or experiments. So what I'll often do, and again, it's down to the teams you have, but it will be silent reflection, a bit of discussion, and then a vote on the most important one from each question. And then that will be the one we pull the action out of. Because the reality is there could be 20 things that come up from each topic, and you can't possibly do 20 different things in the next iteration. But we do want to focus on the ones that the team feel most needs addressing.
And so,
Did we lose you? Okay. While we're waiting for that person to respond, any questions anyone particularly wants to ask?
So could I just ask, so when you're saying something like the poisonous apple one, for instance, would you set it in the context of the work that you've been doing, or would you actually talk about it just more in general terms?
I think it could be both.
Okay.
You can, I guess, tailor that question to the needs of your given situation. You might find that you've got a team that's got a lot of outside interaction, and their poisonous apple might be interference from other teams, from other people trying to push work on them. It might be that their poisonous apple in that team relates to how they work together as a team. There could be, I tend to leave it a little bit open, because then people use their creative license and they choose, because rather than narrowing it to something very specific, leaving it a little bit open, again, I tend to find generates ideas. Leaving it open to interpretation a little bit. For those wanting a few tips on using Miro, I'm happy to do a separate Miro workshop. I'm a bit of a Miro wizard. I love using Miro to create different things, so I'm happy to do a separate workshop on that. I'd like for the remainder of this session to focus on retrospectives in particular. All right, so let's have a look at One Wish. So discuss teams that don't like having fun. Make it in French also. J'espère parler en français. I can't speak French as well as enough to do a session in French, to be honest. I'm pretty good at French. That example a moment ago was awful of it, but I'm much better at reading and writing it. What could an icebreaker have been for this fairy tale one? I think if we spent a little bit more time on it, we could probably come up with what fairy tale character are you, or what is your favorite fairy tale? You could easily just have a box and let people to share their fairy tale stories. What was your favorite fairy tale as a child? There's all sorts of things you could do that would just open up an icebreaker for this. Miro is top. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of, someone said they love the fact they created something. I'm a big fan of doing that. I'd rather make sessions participative rather than just being someone talking at you for an hour. So I always try and make the sessions interactive rather than just being spoken at. How creative workshops have been received in the past. Actually, so again, another honest response for you guys is that sometimes you will have people that don't want to do engaging retrospectives. They just want work to be work. Now, my answer to that, and I've got some stories with it. Someone told me a story recently where right at the beginning, one of the first questions that was asked was something around what you'd like to do differently. And someone said, they didn't want to do this work. They didn't want to do this retrospective. And that kind of took the wind out of their sails for a bit, because they had made the effort to do something a bit different and a bit creative. And they'd immediately had someone kind of kick them in the gut a little bit. Now, I guess the answer to this is that, or my answer to this is that, again, you can't make everyone happy, right? There are people that prefer to just think of work as just work. I would probably challenge that person. You could probably find a retro format that works for them. It might be that they've had bad experiences with such retro formats or engaging workshops in the past, and they've just disconnected. So I'd be looking to have a conversation with them, understand their concerns. I think their particular concern with regards to this is that they felt that the questions narrowed their thinking away from some of the other things they wanted to bring up. So another thing you might recommend doing, and I might start including more of in my retro templates, is kind of that parking lot, that section where people can just share things unrelated to the questions, because they may have something that they need to get off their chest, or there's something that feel something's really important. We don't want to stifle their voices by forcing them down the thinking of the certain questions that we've created there. So something I'm probably going to start to include in all my formats going forwards is a section that's kind of free for all, and I'll probably turn that into a themed free for all section. So I guess I'm trying to think of what would represent a backlog or an open space with regards to Disney, but I'd probably create, or a fairy tale, I'd probably create something in that vein to enable them to have a voice. And again, by having that conversation with them, understanding their concerns and letting them know that, the next time they could probably help choose the next format, I think we could probably get those people on board. In terms of how we access these retro templates, I make them all available via my website to download for free. If you have a paid for Miro account, you can essentially download a board backup of each of these and upload them into your own Miro instance. Any more questions anyone's keen to talk about whilst we have the time?
What's your website address, Chris? Is it on the...
I will share it in the chat right now.
Okay.
The virtualagilecoach.co.uk and /retrospectives is where all the retrospectives live.
Have you got a favourite one?
I got a favourite one.
Yeah.
My favourite one has historically always been the hero's journey. And the reason for that is it was one of the first ones that I began immersively using. And for me, it always begins with a few days before the retro. I'd send like an email saying something like, fellow adventurers, on Friday, we're going to be taking a journey together through the story of our heroes, which is you guys. And it might include some imagery and things like that. And it's always been one that I've liked personally doing because you can tell it really well. In the hero's journey, you're kind of saying, well, who are heroes? What do we not need to celebrate? Who's our mentors? Who represents our Mr. Miyagi and our Obi-Wan Kenobi in our story? Who's there for us? Who's guiding us to be successful? Who's our what represents our risks? What's the cavern that we're going to enter and face the dragon? What's our Darth Vader or our kid from the Karate Kid, the opposite guy in Cobra Kai? Just tell the story of that. And because it's movie related and because it's story themed, so I think a lot of people buy into stories. It's always been one of my favorite ones. My favorite one that I've created recently has probably been the Elf movie retrospective because it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. And I managed to get the question in there, how have we as a team been a bunch of cotton-headed ninny-muggins? Which I thought was a great question to ask. Right. Any further questions for anyone?
How would you deal with really large groups, which encourages lots of, I suppose, a lot of hiding, and the loudest voice is always kind of
sure.
Moving.
So again, coming back to the way I tend to do the questions, that tends to promote or avoid the situation where loud voices dominate as much as possible. So by allowing silent contemplation while people answer the questions, that allows people who may not be as confident, who might be drowned out by louder voices, to share their thoughts, particularly on a board like Miro, allows it to get that down visually. And then if I observe in a session someone who is perhaps dominating the conversation a little bit more, I'll call them out for it, but in the right way, in an open way. So great to hear from you. Thanks for your participation. I'm keen to hear from some of the people who haven't spoken yet. And by doing that, by calling them out on it a little bit, it kind of pushes them to think about silencing their voice to let other people speak as well. So it's not about disacknowledging their voice. It's just by letting people know, we've heard from you quite a lot, and that's wonderful. We love your engagement, but we're keen to hear from some of the others that haven't spoken yet.
Yeah.
And when doing it in large groups, I think having these online whiteboards for me very much helps because you can allow a large crowdsourced bit of content. You can allow the voting of the most important topics, and that helps you kind of start wide, but then narrow down to the most important ones to that group. Just looking at the chat, so a few people are leaving. Thank you for participating. Thanks to everyone for coming along. Again, I'm here for another 10 minutes if anyone wants to ask any further questions about retrospectives.
I've actually used your Harry Potter one, and it went down really well.
Okay.
So the team sort of like themes and can actually get their head around it.
Yeah.
And it's not boring, basically, as well.
Well, again, that's why I do these things, because people connect to the subject matter a little bit, and it asks those questions in a slightly abstract way. So if I think back to the Harry Potter one, you've got questions like, was it Petrificus Totalis? What's stalling our progress? What's stopping us entirely? You've got, I think, Lumos, what's lighting our path? Lumos being a wand, a spell you can use to light the direction. So there's lots of little abstract ways of asking questions. And again, coming back to the point I made earlier on, asking a question in a very slightly different way can very much result in different outcomes. So coming back to that stand-up question, you change what's blocking you, what's your impediments, to what challenges are you facing, opens up the answers a little bit and can get some bit more engagement. Has anyone else used any of my templates I've shared? Any stories from those?
I didn't use your retro specifically, but I noticed you've been sharing a lot of the Advent ones and a lot of the Christmas ones, and it sort of inspired me to create my own for my team, and it went down really well.
What did you do?
So I did one in mural, and I just kind of broke it down. It was kind of based, I suppose, on the 4 L's. Okay. So I did Santa's naughty and nice list, nice. Which were the liked and lacked. Mm-hmm. I did. I think about Britney Spears' song "All I Want This Year" was kind of the one thing that we thought that we would have liked to have had, and then a section with Elf, which was for Elf improvement, which was, what have you learnt from this this sprint, and then I always like to include a bit about thanks. So I included some little presents around a tree, encouraged people to select a present, and on a tag write the thanks to the person that they were thanking.
Very cool. Again, and I guess I'll ask you, how long did that take you to do?
It didn't take long, because obviously with Mural they've got like an image search, so you can just search for something and put it straight into Mural, so that works quite well. So probably about half an hour. And
so that half hour investment and your time, how was it received by your team?
Oh, they really loved it, because prior to that we'd been doing quite sort of I think we got a bit stuck in a rut, so we were talking about the same things, people getting a bit sort of despondent from it. So I think it was really good, especially sort of this time of year when people are sort of winding down, ready for the break.
And I guess this is the one of the things I like about doing retros in a different way as well, is, as you say, it can break that monotony, but it can also reinvigorate the team. So I'm all for using them, and I personally would try and do a different retrospective every time I worked with a team to always keep them fresh. But again, I would make that decision a team decision rather than my own. So if they wanted to do lots of different retrospectives every time, great. If they love a certain format and that works for them, they might want to do that repetitively for a month or so and then move on to the next one. That may be what they need as a team. But I'm a big fan of using these different styles, and I find the results they generate make it worthwhile. Right, I think we've probably finished there then, guys. It's been great to have you. Thanks for attending the workshop. Keep an eye out for other workshops that I'm going to lead on all things virtual and remote agility on the Virtually Agile meetup channel. Thanks very much. Obviously, check out the website for more retrospectives, and have a wonderful Christmas, one and all. Put the hat back on to finish.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
It's been great, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good Christmas and holiday.
Thank you. It was really good.